Fast forward, you come over channel is channel spam say how see FunnTV GH podcast or training make with making headlines. And you jam ready to be exmo. And you know brush you say any can ya message so bit me as channel. Now watching I hit all the notification bell na afi watching me leave nice comment na boy ama me hu ye pa share na for so incentive enkebi. Now your boy political highways in this war. Yeah tra yen shemu kakra meno kase ye ni etre eye amonone America na election ekoso eye Donald Trump ene eye Kamala Harris enya kasem koto akra battle no ayu meno kase most of the states na polls no etimi aba over no anakse a end no next ohwe the old lady dia na Donald Trump ena mina ukasei o hwa onon ena utimi LED post na enyaksem koto akra na ohwe Georgia utimi epolu 90,935 what is 51% of the total vote cast itimi ekoma Donald Trump Samsung Kamala Harris and so epolu 86,379, which is equivalent to 48.5% in the total vote cast. Na yebobo Ryan simu na yahwen yako endieba ewo America. Yahwe when in a winning American election. Dona and now say say Harrison. Yamon Ryan simu right about now.
Electoral votes, 270 electoral votes needed to win. And now we have a key race alert. In the state of Georgia, Donald Trump is in the lead with 51% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 48.5% of the vote. Donald Trump with a 4,556 vote lead. That's with only an estimated 3% of the vote in. The polls just closed at 7. In the state of Florida, Donald Trump in the lead, his new home state, 53.2% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 45.9% of the vote. Donald Trump with a healthy 438,912 vote lead. That's with half of the vote in, 50% of the estimated vote. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, Donald Trump in the lead there with 58.5% of the vote. Kamala Harris with 40.5% of the vote. Donald Trump with a 2,871 vote lead. Still a lot of votes to come in from the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're coming up on another critical round of poll closings in the presidential race at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. That's just minutes from now. 37 of the 270 electoral votes needed to win the White House are at stake. When voting ends in North Carolina and Ohio and West Virginia, North Carolina is one of the 7 crucial presidential battlegrounds tonight, as its changing demographics have made it more competitive for Democrats than in some past elections. Kamala Harris is in a heated battle right now with Donald Trump in North Carolina after he won that state in both of his previous presidential campaigns, narrowly last time. Abby Phillip has some new information from the Harris campaign headquarters at Howard University. Abby, tell us more.
Yeah, Jake, I mean, as you noted, Donald Trump won North Carolina the last time around, but by the slimmest margin of the states that he did win. So the Harris campaign, they are looking at that state as very much in play. What I've heard from the campaign tonight is that they are seeing in some rural counties lower than expected votes. Those counties are expected to go for Donald Trump, so they see that as a positive sign. And then on the other hand, when they look at where their voters might be, it's in places like the Raleigh-Durham area where you're going to have a larger proportion of those voters educated, a lot of people moving into the state, into those communities. You're going to have more diversity in those communities. And I'm told that the Durham turnout today gave them some optimism and hope as they go into this poll closing deadline in just a couple of minutes. So the campaign has been talking about all these battleground states having a plausible path to victory. They see North Carolina still very much in play, Jake.
All right, Abby, thanks so much. Let's go to Caitlin Collins now in West Palm Beach, Florida, at the Trump headquarters. Caitlin, what is the Trump campaign looking at right now?
Well, Jake, obviously when it comes to North Carolina, something that they're hoping will be a gut check for them tonight. One thing that they're looking at, remember, this is a state that they thought Donald Trump was well on his way to winning when President Biden was still in the race. Of course, once he dropped out, it seemed like it was more in play. One thing that I'm told aides are keeping an eye on tonight is whether or not the governor's race has an effect on what the ultimate numbers there look like in the presidential race. Obviously, the Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who is the Republican gubernatorial candidate, has faced scandal after CNN reported on his past comments. That is something they will be watching closely tonight, as Josh Stein, the Democrat, is expected to do well. We'll see what the ultimate race looks like there. And Jake, I should note, as they are keeping a close eye on these early gut checks, hopefully they believe in Georgia and North Carolina, Donald Trump is also still making calls to get voters out in Pennsylvania tonight. I was told that he was just on the phone calling into radio stations inside Pennsylvania, urging people to get out and make sure they get to the polls and vote. And Jake.com says some of his top surrogates are also posting online, urging people to get out and vote. Stephen Miller himself urging men to get out and vote, Jake.
All right, Caitlin Collins in West Palm Beach with the Trump headquarters. David Chalian has some exit polls coming in from North Carolina now. David, what issues seem to be driving voters in the Tar Heel state?
Yeah, Jake, let me just explain to you that first we're going to look at how people feel about way things are going in the U.S., in North Carolina, what North Carolina voters are saying. 6% enthusiastic, 21% satisfied. The plurality, 43% of North Carolina voters tell us they are dissatisfied with the way things are going in the U.S., 27% angry. I just want to say those bottom two, 7 in 10 voters that are dissatisfied or angry, obviously, if you're the Trump campaign, you think there's a lot of opportunity there for you. But the Harris campaign sees opportunity there too. They want to get at least a chunk of those dissatisfied and angry voters who are dissatisfied and angry with Trump's dominance in our politics. So that'll be something to watch later in the evening. We also are looking here at the most important issue. Economy actually ranks top, not like it is nationally, but like we saw in Georgia, though it ticked down from that. 36% say the economy is the most important issue in North Carolina. Democracy is right up there, Jake, at 32%. Well down then is abortion and immigration in the teens. We also asked about hurricane aid here. Is federal hurricane aid getting to the people who need it? You see it's roughly split here, but 49% say yes, federal hurricane aid getting to where it needs to go. 46% say no. And then Joe Biden's approval rating, it's 1 point higher here in North Carolina than it is in Georgia or nationally. 42% approve, 56% disapprove. Again, the Harris campaign would like to make sure they get some of those Biden disapprovers into their fold, but that kind of approval on Biden is what is giving the Trump campaign hope in a place like North Carolina. Jake?
Interesting. All right, David Chalian, thanks so much. And let's talk about this. And Dana, I mean, again, some headwinds for Kamala Harris here in these exit polls. First of all, 70% of North Carolinians of Tar Heels are either dissatisfied or angry with the state of things. The economy is the number one issue. That's terrain that where Trump traditionally polls better. And then a bad job approval rating for Joe Biden, her boss.
Yeah, it is true about the 70 or 71% of people who are dissatisfied and angry. But I think, unlike what Chris said before, saying that means that it's a very good sign for Donald Trump. I think that what you are maybe not calculating, and what David and David with Anderson are not calculating, is that there are a lot of women and men who are dissatisfied with the fact that women don't have the ability to control their reproductive rights in America.
No, look, it's baked in. I mean, the right track, wrong track, we've known for some period of time, and the fact is the race, despite the fact that people are very unhappy for whatever reason with the way the country is going, is still supposedly as tight as can be. So Kamala Harris is clearly going to be able to overcome that. Incidentally, may I just, in the last segment, I said, I don't know why the independents are so heavily for Trump in Georgia. Fortunately, we have a very smart Republican pollster listening, and who wrote to me and said, it's the same problem that democracies, incumbents and democracies around the country are facing right now. Around the world, rather. Inflation. They don't like the way things are going. They want somebody to fix it. And that's Donald Trump's basic pitch at the end. which is it's broken, I'm going to fix it.
I don't want to drop the ball on what Dana said, though, about what people mean when they are dissatisfied. It's the same thing about what they mean by democracy or being independent. It's not entirely clear until we're closer to the final tallies.
No, absolutely. But the battleground states are Aaron Burnett's beats tonight. Aaron?
They are, and of course, we're just moments away from polls closing in a lot of these states in these final crucial minutes, really, in North Carolina, crucial minutes. Brianna, where you are in Charlotte, the people still have to vote, and we're starting to see some of these exit polls, concerns about the economy, the dissatisfaction that people have. What have voters been telling you?
They've been telling us, Aaron, that everything matters. We're here in Mecklenburg County, which is going to be closely watched. It voted 66% for Joe Biden in 2020, and this is going to be very important to see the result here, to see how Harris performs compared to how Joe Biden did in 2020. I'm joined now by a voter, Brian Flores. You just voted.
I did.
And who did you vote for?
For Harris.
And tell me about how you came to this decision.
So I wasn't going to vote at all until my girlfriend was blowing up my phone telling me to go vote. And if I didn't, she was going to break up with me. So now I'm here.
Was she seriously going to break up with you?
No, I made that up. She didn't say that, but it's funny to say that.
So she asked you to vote for Harris.
She did.
And so you voted for Biden in 2020, but what were you going to do this time?
I wasn't going to vote at all.
You were just going to stay home.
I was going to stay home, eat some chips or something, I don't know.
And so you came just before polls closed, but here's the thing, how long did it most people have been saying it's taken them 5 or 10 minutes. Tell us how long it took you to vote.
So I got off of work at 4:30, drove here about 30 minutes. I think I walked in like at 5:05-ish, and I was waiting for about 2 hours. I just walked out.
Brian, 2 hours to fix your address, right?
2 hours.
Brian Flores, thank you so much. Aaron, back to you.
Well, that's devotion. That's devotion. 2 hours to fix the address and to stay there and to vote. I mean, all right, John, but those are the stories the Harris campaign wants.
You know what?
More stories like that.
That's a vote today that was not going to be there yesterday or the day before.
That is right.
Which, in a competitive race, it starts with one, and that's how you build, right? So what do we have so far as we look at the map? Let's come out to the big picture first and show you. Sorry, I was just peeking in there. It's early. That's the big headline here. Look at a lot of that gray as we go from east to west. We have a lot to count still tonight. But we have some interesting things happening. Let's start in battleground Georgia, the one battleground state where we do have some results right now, and you have a very narrow lead for Donald Trump. Well, that's, I guess, better than that. Lead for Donald Trump, 54,000 votes now. I say narrow and it grows. That's what happens on live television. You see that right there. But this is very, very early in the race. We have 7% estimated reporting. So you're looking at the map. You see the red filling in the small rural counties. That is the bedrock of the Donald Trump movement. He wins big in rural America. The challenge for Harris is to run it up here. We have nothing from Fulton County. You saw Victor Blackwell earlier tonight in Gwinnett County. Very early on. You have a little more 1,000, 1,100 votes there if you add that up. So we have a long way to go. Just for comparison purposes, Joe Biden gets 58. So can the vice president keep it there at 59 as we move through the night? Again, that's an incredible early rationale there. But that's what you're looking at, right? Are you at least matching the coalition of the last guy to win the state? And that would be Joe Biden 4 years ago. And if you're not, if you're losing in some areas, can you make it up somewhere else? So that's where we look at Georgia right now. All it tells us we have a very competitive race. Virginia used to be a battleground state. It's reliably blue now, but it will give us some pretty important clues tonight. It will, because if you look through right here, only 2% of the vote in. Again, you see, 45,000 to 43,000. This is a state that's going to be around 4 million votes, maybe even higher than that by the end of the night. So this is very, very early on. It's 2% of the vote. But you look at the map and you say, are there any surprises here? This would be a surprise. Prince William County in the suburbs, you see, D.C. is right here. Very blue suburbs here. Fairfax County, go back 20 years, Republican leaning. Now you come out here to Prince William County. Again, it's only 5% of the vote. Trump up by 6 points there. Just go back and take a peek. This was blue, and it was decidedly blue. So it's very early. That vote total could be one precinct, could be one Republican area. It's just a thing we keep an eye on. You mark it early on. Right now, that's where Biden did very well. At the moment, Trump, if Trump can improve in the suburbs and the exurbs, that's his path back to the White House. It's early on, but that's the thing you look at as this plays in. What else are we looking for here? This is Chesterfield County. Richmond, Virginia is the capital. Suburbs beneath it to the south, suburbs around it to the north. Only 6% of the vote in. Harris getting 51%. Again, your test is match it up to Biden. He had 52. She wants to stay where his number is. You say, oh, it's a point or so. A point or so can matter. Maybe not in Virginia. She may still win the state. But if she's underperforming Biden in the suburbs, that would be a warning sign. This is way too early to say that's the case. I pointed out just that these are the markers we're going to go through as we go through the night, as we look it out. When it comes to Virginia, here's my test here. Again, this is 2%. Those numbers, forget about them. We're going to get a long way to go there. Here's the number you want to look at. This was a 10-point race. 10-point race 4 years ago, right? It was not a 10-point race in 2016, right? It was still blue in both races. That's Obama. Sorry, I went all the way back to Obama there. Let's come to 20.
Fast forward, Mamma was what emergency and was a FunnTV GH podcast or set training because make headlines. And your Jim Rainy be Akroma, and it young Brazil say, and the Kanya message to become subscribe to the channel. Hit on notification bell, share now for front so answer into Inkabi, and it young Brazil, young bone riding some Musi, Nanamenoka say the American Indian area, a election, El Coso El Honon, Yetimi Akovia, Akroma, and Yaksam go to Akroma. Now, Shannon's mom say, a year, most of the states now, election, I end the idea, we are Donald Trump and Otimi a carry victory no in most of the states America. Now here Florida with me a poly a year 3,000 I beg your pardon 3,192,313 which is 53.2%. Sounds so and a year Harrison and so it me a poly a year 2,753,401 which is 45.9%. Now most of the states, you know, Igusua omu air to the na 7:30 in American time, no. Now say BBA to me about Montina at least from 9:10 when the beat me the or carry a victory, no. And the yen some more running some near when you call any day. Shall say FunnTV GH.
So as long as they are in line, they will be allowed to cast their vote. And then once the voting is done, the memory cards from the scanners will go in one vehicle, speaking specifically here in Gwinnett County, to the voters' elections office, and then the ballots will be sent in a separate vehicle. So you'll have hundreds of cars, 2 from each of the 156 precincts in a caravan off to the office, and then they can begin to be tabulated.
Caravan, a parade of sorts. And what's so important is how transparent it is. The Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, Victor, just the other day telling, you know, by every 15-minute period, what they expect to have come out. They just want everyone to see the transparency there. All right, as those polls get ready to close, you see Victor there in Georgia. Let's go to Pennsylvania, another battleground state. Polls getting ready to close there in just over an hour. Brian Todd is at a polling place near Pittsburgh, crucial part of the state. Brian, what are you seeing there?
Aaron, heavy voter turnout here in Washington County, just south of Pittsburgh, and you mentioned the polls closing in about a little over an hour. We're expecting a little bit of a late surge here at these precincts. 2 precincts are voting here. I have Craig Zemba here. He's a voter here in Washington County, just voted. Craig, the operative question we asked so many people, who did you vote for and why?
Donald Trump.
Okay, why?
And really comes down to just inflation, cost of living, and how things have gone in the last 4 years.
The process, do you trust the voting process? Did it go smoothly for you? You know, there are flare-ups, that a lot of, you know, hype and misinformation is out there. Do you trust the voting process here?
I do. I've lived here for a while, and everything's always been very smooth.
Okay. Thanks for talking to us, Craig. Good luck. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, back to you as we expect maybe a late surge here in Washington County. 1 hour left till poll closings.
We'll see if there's a surge. And again, another voter there. You see that Trump voter you're talking to talking about the economy, as we have heard from other Trump voters. Brian, thank you. And let's go over to Pamela Brown at the voting desk now. So, Pamela, first round of statewide poll closings coming. Georgia's going to be in that list here in just a few moments. What are you looking for?
Right, this is huge. Polls are closing there in just minutes, most of the polls, and then an hour after that, we're going to get those first results from this key battleground state. Georgia's Secretary of State is telling us that turnout could exceed 5 million. That's more than 70% of all active voters in the state. So clearly high interest there from voters. We're going to find out that total number sometime after the polls close. So we also know from Georgia election official Gabriel Sterling, who I've just been speaking with, that tonight's first results account counts for 75% of the overall votes. And the Secretary of State there says that he's optimistic we'll know who clinched Georgia by the end of tonight. Now, one note on Fulton County, Georgia's most populated county and home to Atlanta. We saw several non-credible bomb threats earlier today. We just heard a little bit about that from Victor Blackwell. 5 polling locations were granted a voting extension as much as 45 minutes past 7 p.m. Eastern. Once polls close, the county will have up to an hour to report early vote results, though the expectation is that most precincts will report by just about an hour from now, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be keeping a close eye on this key battleground state that Biden narrowly flipped in 2020 as results start to roll in, Aaron.
That's right. It looked one way, then it looked the other way. It was so close.
11,779.
But who was counting?
Donald Trump was when he called Brad Raffensperger.
All right, Pam, thank you very much. And I hear John King right next to me.
Yes.
So
Pam's right.
You
Donald
chuckled?
Trump was
That's
counting. I was chuckling because Georgia, a little PTSD
Yeah.
over Georgia and all that. But as you see the big clock there, as Pam just said, votes will be coming in soon. 3 minutes, 30 seconds. We got some big polls closings. We'll get to those in a second. I want to look quickly at one thing we have already. The polls are not completely closed. They finish in Indiana. I just want to show you. And again, we're looking at the early results just to see if there are any clues, right? We don't want to overplay things. We also don't want to ignore things that we see, right? So you come right up here. You see one dot of blue in the middle of the Indiana map, right? That's Hamilton County. It's just north of Indianapolis. This, if you went back 20, 30 years ago, you'd see a lot of farms in this county. Now it's much more suburban, especially as you get closer to Indianapolis. Why do I raise that question? It's blue, right? 58% of the vote could flip. Look how close it is. It's 50 to 49. So it could well end up red, as it did in 2020 and 2016. But it's just, is this a signal that Kamala Harris, in the first election, post-Dobbs, in an issue where we know Donald Trump struggled in the suburbs in the 2018 midterms, struggled mightily in the suburbs in losing in 2020, is this a sign? I pointed out this way. Harris at the moment at 50, Joe Biden was at 46 in this county in 2020, and Hillary Clinton was at 37% in this county in 2016. So the suburbs are critical in key races. Indiana is most likely to stay red. Let's be very clear about that. But as you come back to 2024, again, as you look at these early results that we're getting in some states, you try to seek, is it possible? We could look at some other places, look in some of the battleground states and the close-in suburbs. So something to keep an eye on as we go. A quick look at Kentucky. This one's about to close. Some more results have come in. Let's just see if it's any mass to it. Again, Kentucky is a reliably red state. We expect it to stay that way. But you will look, Scott Jennings was talking about this earlier, Fayette County is Lexington in the suburbs. The vice president was a big early lead there. Frankfort is Franklin County. It's Frankfort in the suburbs. You see it there. So let's just compare. So 54%, if you round that up, 2024, at about 42%, 48% for Joe Biden. So right now, in Indiana and in Kentucky, you see the vice president at the moment overperforming Joe Biden in some suburban areas. Now, they're in red states, so we don't know whether that's going to matter as we get into these states. But we are about to get some clues. I want to move the map a little bit. We're about to get results in Virginia. Virginia has been blue for a while, but it was purple not all that long ago. So here's the question in Virginia tonight, which is going to report results to us very quickly. Do we get a 10-point race, as we had in 2020? Do you get it, Democrats winning by 10? That tells you the vice president is holding the Biden map in a state that will go blue. Or do you get a 5-point race, as we had in 2016? That would tell you that Donald Trump not only is running up the score in these red rural areas, but that he's improved his standing in the suburbs a little bit. You know, you see in here, it's Northern Virginia and down around the Richmond area there. So we'll get some key clues. And then also coming up moments ago, of course, one of the biggest battlegrounds of all, as Pam Brown was just noting, 11,779 votes. That was the margin when Joe Biden flipped Georgia. The last time it had gone Democrat, Bill Clinton eked it out in 1992, thanks to Ross Perot in part there. But it's been a long time since Georgia. So as Audie noted, is it a state in transition or is it a tug-of-war state? Jake, that's what we're going to find out. Again, 11,000 votes 4 years ago. The results in battleground Georgia to come in just about any second now. And again, you look at Atlanta, you look at the suburbs, and you see all that red is Donald Trump's base coming out to vote.
All right, and we are just moments away from the first big round of poll closings. Voting's about to end in 6 states, 6 with a total of 60 electoral votes at stake. Keep an eye on the pivotal battleground of Georgia, as most voting is ending there right now. And CNN can bring you a projection now. CNN projects that Kentucky goes to Donald Trump. Donald Trump will win the Commonwealth of Kentucky with its 8 electoral votes. And CNN can also project that Vermont will go to Kamala Harris with its 3 electoral votes. Kamala Harris wins the state of Vermont. It is too early to project in Georgia, Indiana, South Carolina, and Virginia. Let's take a look at the electoral map now to see where the candidates stand. 270 electoral votes are needed to win. Donald Trump has 8. Kamala Harris has 3 electoral votes. Let's bring you a key race alert now. Indiana. Donald Trump in the lead there with 60.3% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 38.1% of the vote. Donald Trump has an 86,829 vote lead. That's with an estimated 13% of the vote in. Let's go to John King now at the Magic Wall. John?
And so, Jake, now we wait, right? You have the states that we've projected, Kentucky and Vermont. Those are the ones you expect. But so what are you going to get here? You see some first votes in Florida. Look at that. Let's just take it out. Okay, it's just south here. It's in Osceola County, just south of Orlando. We like to look at votes when they come in, right? Florida tends to be a reliably red state. Again, though, it'll be a test of whether Harris can improve their standing in the suburbs, or put it this way, whether Trump can improve his standings in the suburbs, whether Trump's collapse in the suburbs continues. First votes in Florida, always interesting to take a look. But what we're waiting for is the battleground just north of Florida, which will be essential in this race. Again, Vice President's easiest path is those blue wall states, but Georgia as a competitive state, what are we looking for? All right, number one, we're looking for the Democratic Foundation, which is Fulton County. Sarah Murray noted Victor Blackwell is in the suburbs here. Some polling places will stay open, but we should get votes pretty quickly. And when you're looking at Fulton County, Atlanta is here. You see how it stretches, a lot of suburbs around it, right? We're at 0 right now. What are you looking for? You're trying to see if she can not only match the president's percentage, get 73% of the vote, but by the end of the night, sometimes this count could last into tomorrow, is the math margin, right? Because if you look here and you come out here, there are 159 counties in Georgia. A lot of them are like this. I'm just picking one randomly. They're small, they're rural, but Trump runs it up. So we're going to watch that. Is the Trump base in rural America coming out in battleground Georgia? It is absolutely essential to his math that he run it up big in places like that. But if that is the case, and that's what we expect to be the case, the Trump base comes out, then the key will be, does the Harris base come out in Fulton County, Atlanta, and then what happens here? Clayton County, just below, predominantly African-American, strong Democratic suburb. You need to run up the number, but it's not just the percentage. What's the raw math? Are Democrats coming out to vote? Democrats need high turnout to offset the Trump rural numbers. So that's one test. And then, for me, once you get further out here, let's go out where Victor Blackwell is, out here in Gwinnett County. All right, look at that. Joe Biden got 58% of the vote, Jake, right? You don't have to go back too far in history. It was just in 2012. Mitt Romney won this county. 4 years before that, John McCain won this county. This is the change in the American suburbs, right? Georgia was a red state then. But look at Romney's number. The Republican share in 2012 in this suburban area is 54%, right? That's what we're looking at tonight. How does Donald Trump fare in the suburbs, right? It goes down to 45% under Trump in 2016. He still won Georgia then at 45%, but then you come to 2020 and Trump's share drops to 40%. You cannot win in a competitive state if you are getting trounced like that in the suburbs. So can Trump get that number back up to 42, 43, 44? If he can, he's in play. If he can't, then this is the tug of war of the state. As long as Harris gets out her base, there's a flip side responsibility for her. But this, we talked a bit earlier about this. This to me, Georgia and North Carolina, demographically, they are just evenly split. They're tug of war. So we're going to see, and it's cliche. It does come down to turnout.
So, can you take me to Florida?
Sure. We got to come back to 2024. You want to see results? Okay,
I think we have
a little bit more competitive. This time, if that result holds, we'll see how that plays out. Right? This is his home state now, but we'll see. But it's early to look at that. But that's one of the things you look at. The other thing you'll look at is, we don't really have it yet, is here, you know, the I-4 corridor, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Orlando, over to the beach, and you see it. And then, you know, the Democrats, again, I have no expectation the Democrats are going to win Florida. But again, you will see, are Democrats turning out? Right? Are Democrats turning out? There's some, you know, there's been a lot of reporting about this. Harris lose a little tiny bit of the Jewish vote. Because of the Israel, you know, unhappiness over Israel-Gaza and how she has talked about that in the White House. You'll see a little bit of that down here. It's more important when you get to suburban Philadelphia and out in the Detroit area as well, around Metro. So you might get some clues out of Florida. My expectation is that Florida will stay that color, but we'll keep an eye on it. Sometimes you get surprised.
Right, and one of the other things that's interesting about trying to divine a national view of based on Florida, which is that as I recall, Governor DeSantis, who's a very conservative Republican governor, I think he won Miami-Dade when he ran for re-election. Is that not right?
I think we can look.
You have the governor's. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be.
No, it's all right. If you want to look, there we go.
Yes.
No, that's the Rubio race. We got to come to governor. Yes, he won. He won Broward.
He won. Chris won Broward.
Chris won Broward. Sorry, DeSantis won Miami-Dade.
DeSantis won Miami-Dade.
Yes.
And it was suggested that he also maybe did better than traditionally Republicans had done with the Hispanic vote, which is obviously significant. And that's one of the areas that people wonder about the vulnerabilities that Harris might have in the league.
Absolutely. Although I would say in Florida you have the most complicated, diverse Hispanic vote than any state in America. It's just much more diverse than in other places, which what makes it more complicated and fascinating. But it has become. You're absolutely right that it has become, especially down here, more Republican. In other states, it was Obama won 2/3 of the Hispanic vote, and now it's become more of a fight in some of the other battlegrounds. But here, this is why one of the reasons Florida has become reliably red is because of the Republican success there. I would also argue it's because of weak Democratic candidates, but we'll save that conversation for another day because this is what we're worried about tonight.
Indeed. David Chalian has more exit polling from north of Florida and Georgia, the battleground that we're watching right now. David, how is the vote splitting among key groups of Georgia voters?
Yeah, now that the polls have closed, Jake, we can look at some of those key demographics. So let's take a look at the African-American vote in Georgia. It's making up 30% of the electorate, according to these early exit polls. Harris obviously winning it big, 86% to 12%. But I want to note here, that 86% number, 4 years ago, Joe Biden had 88%, a tick higher of support of the African-American vote. And Trump's 12%, he is a tick higher than he was 4 years ago when that was 11%. But it's roughly the same with the black vote, what we saw here. Look at younger voters under the age of 30. Harris is winning them. They make up 18% of the electorate. Harris is winning them 60% to 39%. She is doing better with young voters in Georgia than Joe Biden was doing against Trump 4 years ago. Trump got 43% of the youth vote in Georgia 4 years ago. He's down to 39% now, so that'll be something to watch. And then non-college white voters. This is obviously Trump's base. 32%, roughly a third of the Georgia electorate, are white, non-college educated voters. Trump's winning 81% of them. That is a bit better than he was doing 4 years ago, though 4 years ago, it was 35% of the electorate. So as a share of the overall electorate, it's come down. Harris is winning 18% of them, a tick under where Biden was 4 years ago. This will be the story of these exit polls in Georgia. Independent voters. They make up 31% of the electorate. That is a slightly larger share than what they made up 4 years ago. Trump is winning them by 11 points in these early exit poll results, 54% to 30%. Jake, 4 years ago, Joe Biden won independent voters in Georgia when he won the state by 9 points. So we've seen a swing of 20 points towards Trump in terms of the margin, from 9-point advantage 4 years ago with independents for Biden to now an 11-point advantage with independents for Trump in Georgia, Jake.
Wow. David Chalian. And Dana, that is really significant. We see some incremental changes here and there when it comes to young voters. She's doing slightly better. Non-college whites, he's doing slightly better. But that independent swing is wild.
It's a huge swing, and I just want to underscore what David said. It is a bigger percentage of the vote share. Last time around, it was 28% independents. I made up 28% of the Georgia vote, and now it is 30%. And, I was right, 31%. And it is a total flip. It's a complete flip. Donald Trump is doing so much better with independents than Kamala Harris, and Joe Biden kind of ran away with independents 4 years ago, and of course he won the state.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why. What the reason is that there would be this dramatic flip of double digits in independents, and something you don't often hear in election coverage. It's something of a loss as to how you explain that independents would have gone so much more for Trump this time than they did for Biden last time.
Artie, hang on. We're going to go over to Jake for a projection.
And we can bring you another CNN projection. CNN projects that Indiana will go to Donald Trump. Indiana, with its 11 electoral votes, will go to Donald Trump. Let's look at the electoral map now to see where the candidates stack up. Remember, 270 needed to win. Donald Trump has 19 electoral votes. Kamala Harris has 3 electoral votes. They both still have a lot of electoral votes to get up to 270. Let's do a key race alert for you now. In Florida, Donald Trump is in the lead with 51.3% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 47.7% of the vote. Donald Trump has a 138,912 vote lead. I'm sorry, that just went up, a 224,914 vote lead. The votes are coming in as I do this. That's with more than a third, 35% of the estimated vote in from Florida, with its big fat packet of 30 electoral votes. The Commonwealth of Virginia, slightly more competitive. Donald Trump in the lead right now with 58.7% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 40.6% of the vote. That's only with a handful of votes in as of right now, about 1,500 votes. As we stand by for results from the crucial state of Georgia, we are counting down to the end of voting in the battleground state of North Carolina. This historic election night is just getting started. Stay with us.
Election night in America and the magic wall.
Enti we nsema horo timi ko so chana no so mamna wasese wo jemre ewa ha da sene so ba de ndia dumbi edomi ni nsema ro nsemu na yemfa de chinse so ensom aha FUNN TV GH.